So there we sat in our hotel in the middle of nowhere even close to home. And we were just distraught. We couldn't eat, we couldn't sleep. We were just praying for deliverance, for understanding, for God to make sense of this. We had a good relationship with the birth mother. We had a good relationship, we thought, with our agent, but everything, we couldn't see it then, we couldn't see what God was doing, but everything was actually falling into place. And as it turns out, we had been found in the middle of what was a fraudulent adoption scam agency. Now, I will say our adoption was not a scam. It was not. It was legitimate. Up until that point, everything was legitimate, but documentation was incorrect at this point, which is what left everything hanging. And that's why the birth mother changed her mind, because documentation was done incorrectly and there were still some things that needed to be cleared up. But at the time, nobody knew these things, and we were all just distraught. We were confused. We didn't know what to do. And so we sat there in our hotel. We wasted the night away. And the next morning, I didn't even hear from our adoption agent, because she said, maybe tomorrow we'll hear, their final decision, what they want to do. And that was fine. And we just wanted to know an answer. But she didn't even text me or call me back. And I finally had to say, did they decide to parent? And she said, yes, they did. And that's the last I've ever spoken personally to that adoption agent. And so all we could do at this point was load up our vehicle and come back home. And that's what we did. We just came back home in a complete pile of brokenness. We came back home empty-handed. We came back home confused. And we just thought, what are you doing, God? What is going on here? We knew God called us to this. We had done everything He had asked. We had fundraised, we were ready, and now all of our money was gone, and all of our hope was gone, and all of our chances of adopting were gone. And there was absolutely nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do to get our feet back on the ground at that point. And it was right around, it was October 29th, so it was right at Halloween time, and we were setting ourselves up to have to endure the holidays empty-handed again for the 6th year in a row. And it just felt desperate and lonely and hopeless. But in the middle of desperate and lonely and hopeless is exactly where God likes to just get in there and work. So we got home and we decided that the best thing would be to go back to church, to jump back in, even after the adoption had failed. It was so hard. It was so hard to jump back in with our families, but we just clung to them and we leaned on the Lord and we prayed a lot. And we tried to find some joy in the middle of all the hurt and the pain that we were feeling on the inside. And we tried to find some peace and purpose in this new season of waiting. And through it all, we knew God had called us to do this. We knew this was God's plan, but it had taken a sudden turn of events, a turn in the road, which we couldn't make sense of, but now it makes sense. Looking back on it, we understand. So now to the part that is so exciting and the miracle that God performed for us. It had been 6 weeks since we had heard from anybody around our adoption situation. We had heard about the adoption agent, who was in a considerable amount of trouble at that point, but we tried not to dwell there and dwell on that. And we got a call the beginning of December from our lawyer, and we had not made any contact with anybody up until this point. And we talked to our lawyer, and she said the birth mother would like to place the child for adoption. All the documentation is straightened out. Everything is understood. And she knows in her heart this is the best decision for the child. And that's the conclusion that the birth mother had come to, is to reinstate our relationship. And now at this child 6 weeks old at this point, that she was ready to relinquish him to us, and she knew that this was what was right. So through all of that time, we were convinced that the reason that was shut was because it was over. That was it. We were never to have anything to do with that whole situation again. It just wasn't for us. But to our great and wonderful surprise, that was not the truth. God's plan was to bring this full circle and to bring this sweet boy into our arms. But the day that we found out, my heart was just so confused, because I thought it was over. I thought it was done. And I just knelt before God in fear and in reverence. And I asked the Lord to show me, please show me, is this the child that you have for us? And looking back, I have 20/20. I'm like, obviously. But in that moment, it was so terrifying, because you just didn't know what was the truth of it, what God was trying to show you in it. And so I asked him to show me that this child was meant to be for us and for our family, and that this is who he has called us to adopt from the beginning. And so I asked our lawyer, what did they name the child? What is the child's name? And she told us Elijah Robert. And my jaw just dropped, because my husband's oldest brother's name is Robert, and Robert's oldest son's name is Caleb Elijah. So it was this amazing, not even it couldn't be a coincidence. It was this amazing appointment of God that his name would not just be one family name, but two family names of firstborn sons from our other family members. It was just crazy to me to see God work in that way, that his name would be Elijah Robert. And that was the very first time that I saw, okay, yes, this is God, this is God's plan. So even after that, we started to seek counsel with our family. And that night, we wanted to make a decision. It was a Friday when we got the call, and we wanted to make a decision that night. And then Saturday morning, we were either gonna go or we were gonna say no. It was one or the other, and we wanted to do what's right. And we spent a few hours on the phone just clarifying the situation, understanding everything, coming back into these terms and to understand what had been going on over the past 6 weeks and things that, you know, we couldn't see going on behind the scenes. We started to clue into those things. So that night I had to help with a play that was a Christmas play that they were having at the school that I used to work at, and I was doing the lights and helping with some of the sound. And that night I stood there and I just prayed from that sound booth that God would show us and enlighten us. And we talked to our family afterwards. We talked to all of Matt's brothers and sisters, and we kind of counseled with them. And his sister said to me, you have to try. What if you don't try and this is it? So we knew at that moment that we needed to put our hearts back on the line. And our hearts have been through a lot at this point. Just a lot. But we knew it was time to put our hearts back on the line and to reach out and to see if this is God's perfect plan to come to pass. So the next morning we got up at 5 a.m. and all of our family was here helping us get things packed and things in the vehicle and helping us to get ready to get back on the road, go on that 10-hour drive again. And we hit the road in anticipation and in fear and excitement. And we headed back to where we had started. And that night, we got there at like 10 o'clock at night, and we held him in our arms for the first time. And it just felt like everything was perfect. It was this moment of pure joy and peace in the middle of all this chaos, of holding him and knowing that God had brought us through and we were finally together, and I didn't have to worry about being apart from my child anymore, because this child that God had ordained to be a part of our family was in my arms. And it was just amazing. It was amazing. And that first night was a crazy experience, first night of motherhood. You know, he got up every hour on the hour. Things were different. We were in a different place, and beautiful, beautiful couple, wonderful people invited us into their home, and they kept us there for our 2-week wait while we waited for everything to go through. They prayed with us, they fed us, they took us out places, and they took care of us. It was right at Christmas time. They made us a part of their family, and they included us in their traditions, and just doted on us and doted on Elijah and took care of us during that time when we were apart from our families, and I wasn't with my mother or Matt's mother or my grandmother. And during that time, this woman was a mother to my husband and I, and a grandmother to Elijah, and she just poured into our lives, and it was just God's confirming blessing. They didn't charge us to stay at their house. They made a way for us to save quite a bit of money, and they just took care of us, and that was such a blessing. And then throughout that time, we hit different milestones throughout our time there. So we had to wait 5 days for parental rights to be revoked, and then we had to wait for ICPC to go through, and praise God, it was December like 22nd, maybe December 20th, and our ICPC went through just in time for us to get home for Christmas, in time for us to get home to see our family, in time for us to, we didn't miss a single Christmas dinner, we didn't miss our church service for Christmas. We were here for all of it, which was such a beautiful restoration, because my biggest longing was to have our baby for Christmas and for the holidays, and he was there. He was with us on Christmas, and we got to celebrate and just blow it up and have a great time and just snuggle him and enjoy it. It was a miracle. It was a miracle from heaven. God truly blessed us so much with Elijah. And then as we went into the new year, we're doing our post-placement visits, and we did 4 of those. And then as the new year went on, we hit other milestones, termination of rights, and then this past Friday, we finalized on the adoption. And now he is officially, completely, legally our son forever, just as God had originally intended it to be. And it's just so amazing to see what God brought us through, the ups and downs of the journey, just to reminisce on that journey we were in for 2 years. And he brought us through. He saw us to the other side. He has been with us every step of the way. And if God has called you to do something like adopt, go for it. Follow him, pray hard, listen to him, and he will see you through every single step of the way. I promise you. There'll be ups, there'll be downs, there'll be curves in the road. It's a long journey. You just have to buckle up and trust the Lord, because when he says, this is what I want, this is what I want to happen, it's going to happen. You can take it to the bank. It is true. It is his promise. Just trust in him, because he's got this under control. He took care of us. He brought us through the fire, and we came out the other side with this amazing blessing of our son, Elijah Robert. And we're so grateful to God for it. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't make the story go any other way. I wouldn't change a single thing. I wouldn't have ever had that ultrasound be right. I wouldn't have ever had the adoption not fail. I wouldn't have done it any differently, because the way God planned it and mapped it out was absolutely perfect every step of the way. And we rejoice and give God all the praise for what He did and how He brought our families together. And I'm just so thankful for God and His goodness. And I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you found some inspiration from this video, and I hope you know that if God's calling you to do something, step out in faith and do it, because He's got you. And I really appreciate you watching this video. It's a two-part, so I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon with another video, and I'm so thankful for you. I hope you have a great and blessed day. Bye.